Hey guys, it's Serena and welcome back to my channel. Alright, so my name is Serena Trong if you're new here. I make content about my life being a pre-nursing college student. I make vlogs of my daily life and tips and advice videos for you guys if you're interested in becoming a nurse too. So on my channel you can find videos about what to study for the TEAS test, my experience taking the TEAS test, how to apply for nursing programs, and a bunch of things like that. So if that interests you, go ahead and subscribe down below and like this video. So for today's video, I'm going to be talking to you guys about how I earn an A in Anatomy and Physiology, so you guys can do that too. So let's get started. So I took Anatomy and Physiology 1 during my fall semester of my freshman year, and then I also took Anatomy and Physiology 2 during the spring semester of my freshman year. At my university, they wanted me to take it back to back, so I would have an honors sequence course, if that makes sense. So when I was taking Anatomy and Physiology in high school, I was always interested in this subject, and I always did all that I could, but once I got into my A&P class in college, I quickly realized that I'm gonna have to do a lot more work and have to learn a lot more in depth of each topic. Because in high school, it's pretty much just an overview of everything. So what I tried to do was I always tried to review the chapter beforehand, whether it's just a quick skim or reading the chapter before lecture starts. I always did my best to take notes and write down the key concepts before I attended a lecture. And my university, for my A&P class, I had to purchase a specific A&P textbook that was written by my professor. So just make sure you have the correct textbook, because this will be helpful for you when you have it as your own. There are websites where you can rent textbooks, but I think having your own A&P textbook and purchasing it for you to use would be really smart, because you're going to be using it for 2 semesters, and you can always look back on it when you're going through the nursing program, and it's always good to just have a basic foundation of anatomy and physiology. This way you can write in your textbook, whether it's taking notes on the side or just highlighting certain key concepts. My biggest tip for you guys would be to attend your lectures, whether they are going to be virtually on Zoom or in person. I just think that you should always attend your lectures. This way you can get any extra information that the professor explains through the whole class, and the professor usually gives a bunch of examples or scenarios where your professor has experienced themselves. So hearing those stories are really helpful for me in understanding what the concepts are talking about. And once again, if you have a question in lecture, it's just easiest to be there to ask it right then and there, rather than just reading it from your textbook, trying to learn it on your own, and then having to email your professor every time you have a question. You should always email your professor when you have a question, but being in class will help you not only give you auditory learning, but also a visualization of what are the most important topics that my professor is going over in the textbook versus ones that are less specific to understand. Whenever I was studying for a test or an exam, I did my best to make sure I had notes from every single chapter, whether it's from a tutoring session I had, because I went to supplemental instruction a lot. That was provided for free by my university. If you guys have SI where you go, I definitely recommend going to that, because they're just going to reinforce all the material that you're going to learn and go into specifics of what you should be learning. After SI sessions, I usually went to the library whenever I had free time and studied my heart out. So when I say studied my heart out, I don't just mean rereading the chapter a million times. I mean actually putting in the work to understand what you know versus what you don't know. So when I went to the library, they had walls of whiteboards, and you can always rent markers or bring your own markers. So I would go rent a pack of markers and just write everything I could remember from the chapter, went back to my textbook. If I forgot anything, I'd write it in a different marker color, and then just keep repeating that step until I understood most of the material from the textbook, so it's reinforced inside my brain one more time. And if you are studying at home and you don't have like a wall of whiteboards where you are, actually at home I found it was helpful to do it on like sliding doors or like even mirrors. Mirrors are kind of difficult because they show your reflection, so it can be difficult to read. But you can also just buy like your own little whiteboard stands and like whiteboard from like Walmart or Target or something, just so it's easier for you to study. That way you're not just like rewriting everything and wasting paper, but also being productive, and you can do it as many times as you want. Another thing that helped me a lot was making flashcards, whether these are like handheld flashcards or flashcards on Quizlet where you can create your own flashcards. That's really helpful to understand vocab and specific step-by-step processes. So one of these things could be like knowing the different organs of the digestive system and what hormones would go with it, so you could be like, oh, so one side would be the stomach, and then you would have the hormone, which would be like HCl and a bunch of other things that will digest proteins on the other side. So just like quick informational flashcards that you can study whenever you're walking to your classes or just sitting at home or like waiting in a line somewhere. Then you can just whip out your phone, because your phone is really handy, and just start referencing your flashcards. So that's really helpful when you want to study on the go. Another tip I have for you guys would be work on organizing your time. Separate a chunk of time where you know you can study, where you wouldn't have distractions, whether you're at home or at a library. Let's say my class was from 9:30 a.m. to 11:30 a.m. Then I would want to have about like a 30-minute lunch, and then by 12 or 12:15 I'm gonna set an hour and a half or 2 hours to just study. If you don't set a specific time in the day that you are wanting to study and focus, whether it's like during the day or in the afternoon or at night, you're not going to prioritize it, and then all of your studying is going to fall behind and you're going to have to catch up later. So another tip I actually have within the chapters that you're studying for anatomy and physiology, I'd say try to make a summary sheet of the most important concepts. You can use like concept maps and diagrams to visually organize it in your brain. Then it's easier for your brain to compartmentalize that specific topic and the information that goes with it. Going back to organization and like keeping your study space clean, I think it's really important to not like be distracted. So if you have your phone, just like set it aside across your room so you don't have any notifications going off, or like you're not tempted to like just go on Instagram for like 5 minutes, because then it's going to turn into 30 and then it could turn into an hour. So just try to stay focused. Also for organization, always have a planner. I'm going to be referencing a planner a lot in these like upcoming advice videos, because having a planner will keep you organized and it'll help you remember the dates of when your assignments are due, when you have to take a quiz, when your test is, when you have to wear proper attire for labs, everything in between. Just having a planner is always good to have when you are trying to stay organized in college. So I just wanted to show you guys a few resources that I used when I was studying for A&P. My A&P 1 professor was very helpful by giving us as many resources as we needed, whether they were like review packet questions or diagram labeling or just concept map things to help us visualize what we were learning and help us organize it in our brain. So a few of these things include like this concept map about connective tissue. So here you can see just like the different connective tissues and like how there's different sections and how they differ, and during lab we would go over this and I would just highlight a few key notes, and then I would add any extra notes in red pen so it's just easier to see. But like over here I just added some of my own notes. You can also use oh my gosh, I created my own mnemonics all the time, whether like it doesn't make sense or they're just like kind of stupid. Just make mnemonics about things that you can associate with information you have to learn, no matter how crazy it is or not. So this would be review questions that my professor gave us. She would just print out the questions and then leave a little space for us to answer the question. In order to learn like different bones in the body or just like different organs, anything about A&P when it comes to diagrams, I would say try to get yourself the diagram, whether it's in your textbook or in your lab workbook. There'd be a diagram here, and then she would label the numbers, and then we just had to make sure we knew what they were. Make sure you also are spelling all of these correctly, because some professors will take points off when you don't spell certain words correctly. Even if your professors don't provide you with all of these resources like mine did, this was only my Anatomy 1 professor. For Anatomy 2, I still did all that I could when it came to labeling diagrams. I would either take a picture of the diagram in my textbook. So this was my lab workbook that I also had to buy in conjunction with my textbook. And in here, my professor provided me with exercises where I had to match the term with the best definition, prefixes and suffixes that mean certain things, true-false section, and apply your knowledge section where you're gonna use the information that you learn in the chapter to explain a situation that's happening in the real world experiences. So here in the lab workbook, there would be like a little diagram here, which would be the exact same diagram that my professor printed out and laminated for us. But if you don't have a professor who does that for you, like, she was so very kind. My Anatomy and Physiology 2 professor did not provide us with a bunch of those resources, so I really relied on these exercises in this workbook and these diagrams. So instead of writing down the labels once and then having to erase it and everything, I would actually take a sheet protector, just lay it on top because it's clear, and then you can still use the same diagram and the same like lines, and then you can just use an expo marker, practice your diagrams. If you miss one, just erase it and do it again. So that was the easiest way for me to do it if I just wanted to use. You can also copy the diagram if you have a scanner and print it out and then put the diagram sheet inside the sheet protector so you have it all the time, so you can reuse it as many times as you need to. So I mentioned earlier about chapter summary concept review sheet things. For this one here, I just put the most important information that I had to remember if I didn't already know. I drew my own diagrams here. Sorry, I'm looking at the monitor whenever I look at that because I can't see. So here, I drew my own diagrams because I am a visual learner and it's just easier for me. So once again, I actually found an example of what I was talking about with the spreadsheet thing. Here I just copied this page of diagrams from my workbook or textbook, and then you just slide it in here. Technical difficulties. So you can just slide it in here, and then you have the option of writing on it with expo markers to fill in the labels, and then you can just erase it. Another tip I have for you guys would be if you tend to like write a lot during lectures and you try to write like every single word that the professor says on your piece of paper, that's going to take a lot of time and you're not going to be actively listening and understanding what your professor is saying. So that's why it's important to go over the chapter beforehand, but also if your professor provides the PowerPoint slides that they talk about during lectures, go ahead and print them out. That way you won't be writing the PowerPoint slide notes when you're in class, but you're actually going to write any extra things that you might have to add. And it was really helpful because, you can just write notes anywhere on the blank sides. That way you're not just sitting in class writing word for word everything that is on the slides. Not that it wouldn't be helpful, but you just want to be actively listening and trying to understand the information. Also, if you don't have a professor who doesn't like provide a million resources for you, there's always resources available to you. You can watch Khan Academy videos, you can watch Crash Course on YouTube. So if you're ever having trouble, just know that the internet is out there and you can always find a different way to learn about those topics, because sometimes your textbook when it tries to explain things to you, it can be too wordy, too specific, and like almost too professional, I guess you could say. So you kind of want to just learn it in everyday kind of term. I hope that this video helped you guys. I tried to show a few of my resources that I had, but if you guys have any questions about anything, go ahead and comment them down below. Subscribe if you want to see more videos from me. I know that if you guys are gonna put in the work, study, and do the best that you can get an A. I hope you guys like this video, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye guys.